Post-election, how do we heal our minds, bodies, and souls? This is a panel of all Black men healers. Last time I did a healer panel of all Black women. This is all Black men. And I know if you watch this channel, you're probably wondering, why does she have all Black men up here? I have Black men here because we need to understand our each other's perspectives. And as a community, I think this election has shown us more than anything the need for us to really come together and understand one another's perspectives. So Black men are our fathers, our brothers, our cousins, our partners, our sons, our friends. So yes, we need to understand these perspectives of Black men. So today we're going to have a very lively conversation with Black men healers. If you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, a toxic job survivor, but more importantly, I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women. So I'm going to ask my panelists to introduce themselves as I see them on the screen. They will introduce themselves, and then later in the panel discussion, we'll talk a little bit more about services they offer and how they can be contacted. So Ja, I'll start with you.
I was to find my unmute button. My name is Johnny Cole Thomas. They call me Ja in the sense of just to kind of shorten all that. I'm a yoga teacher, yoga trainer, a philosopher. I teach basically folks how to love themselves. I think that's what the practice of yoga is that sort of self-acceptance. Um, I teach a decolonized yoga, and that decolonized yoga is seeing ourselves as each other, as opposed to just kind of this selfish sense of things. I've specialized in teaching in South Central LA because I think we need this sort of self love more than anyone because we kind of had our identity stripped, which is sort of why we see ourselves in the condition and the place that we see ourselves in. And so that's sort of the long and short of it. For me, I have a couple of spaces around now that I've been active. I teach at the Tree Yoga Cooperative. I also teach at the Walk Good Yard, which is family fruits of the tree, and Lotus Wellness and Yoga. So I'm kind of all out spreading this philosophy and this practice.
Thank you, Ja. Welcome. Okay, Christopher.
Hey, what's good, everybody? Christopher Brown. I'm the CEO of Full Being Services, and we are a wellness collective. We specialize in providing qualitative services for Black and Brown people, primarily through therapy, but we also consult with organizations, provide trainings, workshops, trying to create healthier environments. So then, in turn, people can go home and, you know, have stronger family bonds and then build stronger communities. So that's really our focus. We do that through just a myriad of ways. We have partnerships with entities like NCTSN to promote trauma affirming care across systems. We're also the complex trauma training site for the state of Pennsylvania as well. So, yeah, we do a few things, and the emphasis or the bottom line, I would say, in our entire mission and purpose is really working on building stronger communities for people of color. And I'm a therapist myself, so everything you really hear from me, or a lot of what you hear from me, will be from a therapist lens.
Okay, thank you, Christopher. Professor Odie.
Good people, great people, God's people. I am Professor Odie. I am a therapist in the city of Philadelphia. I'm a provider with Full Being Services alongside Christopher Brown. As he said, we specialize in strengthening Black and Brown communities from a trauma-based perspective. I'm also a content creator with over, what is it, like 300,000, between 250 and 300,000 people across TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube. And I primarily teach my clients how to be selfish. And when I say selfish, I teach them to unlearn the negative internal trauma narratives that they've learned over time so that they can unhook themselves from trauma patterns and increase their quality of life overall. But
Okay.
that's what I do. That's me.
Awesome. Okay. So I just want to tell the audience briefly how I met each of these men. Okay. So Ja, I actually finished a teacher training program, and Ja was my yoga instructor. So more of that coming forward. I'll be doing some online yoga for my community. And then Christopher, I met him through the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, which I'm a part of. I'm an affiliate of that. So I met Chris there. And then Professor Odie, I actually saw him online having a conversation with the FD Signifier, and I heard he was from Chicago, and I was loving the stuff he was saying. I'm from Chicago. I was like, oh, I got to reach out to him. And then I just found out later that him and Christopher worked together. How random is that? So anyway, that's how I came to meet these gentlemen. So let's talk about this election. So the panel is set up so that anyone can answer any of the questions or not. Okay. So can you please share your thoughts about this election, this presidential election? What were your thoughts about it? I know, Ja, I was like telling Ja, like, I'm like, oof, man. Okay. So thoughts about it.
Mine is, welcome to America. I think for those of us who are shocked, we haven't been paying attention to where we are. If you have not paid attention to history to see moments of where men have literally gotten off for murdering Black folks, and us having all the evidence. So it's not a shock of the roots of America's hypocrisy showing up in its election system. I think in terms of, from a historical standpoint, we could see Rome falling and that identity failing. And in that failing of said identity, they're flailing. And I think exactly as what you said is it's a time for us to stand up collectively and own our story as opposed to standing up his story. Because it's
Mm,
through his story that we find ourselves in these trauma patterns of where we've been told that we're curses instead of blessings.
mhm.
So I just see the ugly vestiges of white supremacy and even uh, the fundamentalism of white supremacy that has us marching towards a devotion to an antichrist or anti-harmony. And
Mm.
that's sort of my perspective, I think, of the election. It's just par for the course of America.
Yeah. Can I ask you a follow-up question, Jai? Because I think that I've been just listening and watching a lot of people on YouTube, a lot of Black people, and we've been talking about that it's not really the shock. It's kind of a shock, right? Because you're like, no, wait, how could that really happen? What? But we understand that America is what America is. But for me, I kind of feel like I've been like on this roller coaster. Like it's just been like I can't even describe it, but it's just been a lot of emotions for me, and just trying to do whatever I can to stay grounded, limit what kind of news I take in. But I've been really like not feeling myself. So I'm just wondering, was that the same for you? That you kind of felt like not quite yourself, or
No, I've been preparing for this, honestly. I've been totally expecting it, in the sense that one, the roller coaster of hoping that there would be a chance to go back to the sacred feminine. And what I mean by that is recognizing that we've understood that we're in a dualistic society. And
Mhm.
so back before you had the rise of Western society, which has been this move towards this more male dominated perspective or this singular perspective, right? The feminine aspect has been us coming from a more mystical place, going to a place of where we can be more in our intuition, to where people would go to oracles and things like that to sort of kind of get what that perspective of the all is. And so there's been this serious move away again as um, Rome needed to try and reconstitute itself and build this narrative around a king or one individual that would now be the ruler and spiritual father, if you will. When before it was kind of up to the individual communities of what was their spiritual being. Um, So no, I don't necessarily feel it taking me out of sorts as much as it's now wanting to stand up for again what we know is the truth. And that truth again, from a historical standpoint, we know that we are said root of civilization, right?
Mhm.
Not like outside of it, but we're the creators of it. And the people standing in place are imposters. So when we have people going around trying to find the last 12 tribes and so on and so forth, we just don't know the depths of the matrix. Once you
Mhm.
know who you are, there is no um, feeling a certain kind of way. We're recognizing that we're waking up again, and now it's time for us to take ownership. So once we take that ownership, then we can let our little cousins know who they actually are. This is why they're so violent, and I'll even say why their Neanderthal gene is active.
Hmm. Wow, I like that. Waking up again. Okay. And telling the young people who they really are. Okay. Okay. What about you, Christopher and Professor Odie? How have you been impacted by this election?
So for me, I kind of have to go the other way a little bit, where I'm I can be shocked but not surprised, right? So like I live in Philly, right? So I'm in certain neighborhoods at certain times of the day. You know, if somebody pulls a gun on me, I may be shocked at a gun in my face, but I'm not going to be surprised, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that similar experience where we know what America is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we know the lengths that are taken to distort history, to cover up history, to manufacture lies,
Mm-hmm.
right? To twist it and kind of change the narrative. Like
Mm-hmm.
these are things that we know and that we're aware of. But sometimes it's how it happens as well, right? Just kind of like the overwhelming uh the popularity of the majority. It just the way it kind of happened was, to me, it was a little bit shocking. Like, okay, like, all right, we're back in it. Like, I mean, we never really left, but we're deeper. I think we're deeper than a lot of people realize, and
Mm-hmm.
you see it playing out,
Mm-hmm.
in Congress and the House, and I mean, thankfully, we have some. I'm proud that we have some really strong representatives that are standing in and, I mean, just intensely and passionately fighting for us and representing for us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we are dealing with systems that we have never had control of, and have gone through extenuating lengths to ensure that they maintain control, you know
Mm-hmm.
and we're just, we're just kind of, we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot of things in place that led to this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of movement, there's a lot of funding, a lot of support. And so, we're really watching the tip of the iceberg of a carefully crafted, organized plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when we look at our history,
Mm-hmm.
when we have organized in the past, right, what's happened to us, right? So there's so much power in organizing. There is. And there's
Mm-hmm.
so much organization that's going on behind the scenes, and pulling on the levers of authority and power and control to create the situation that we have today. So no, I'm not surprised. I'm a little shocked about how it happened,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not surprised.
Okay. But you also said lessons learned about this is that we need to get organized as
We
a
do.
people. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. Okay.
We
Okay.
absolutely do.
Okay.
Our communities, right?
Mm,
We have to support each other. And I'm not just talking financially, I mean mentally, emotionally. Um, like, we have to be each other's safe spaces. Right? We have to create brave spaces for each other and challenge each other
mhm,
where, in circumstances, in areas where we know we're lacking,
mhm.
right? We got to represent for ourselves.
True. True. Because nobody else is looking out for us, for real.
Nobody,
Yeah.
nobody.
Yeah. Thank you, Christopher. What about you, Professor Odie?
I think the best way that I can explain it is that it's the difference between hearing a dog whistle and seeing a dog, right? It's like I recognize that the reality existed, and I recognize that the permutations of said reality existed. They exist. But to see the reality front and center, right? John was talking about taking ownership, and Chris was talking about creating communities of safety. When we look at, because one of the things, because I posted about it on Instagram, and I'm like, I sincerely need for you all to read the mandate for leadership. I need you all to read it. I need you all to read this manifesto so that you can understand what it is that you are facing. Because right now, at this moment in time, it is not the time to. You can fear, but that fear, do not allow it to immobilize you, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
you can be shocked, but do not allow that shock to illusion you. This situation should be shocking enough for it to be disillusionary, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am in no way like lines have been drawn, and you have to take accountability for how it is that you maneuver within those lines or outside of those lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because being very honest, I was not shocked. I was irritated. I was frustrated. I was appalled, but I was not shocked, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm irritated. I'm frustrated, and I'm appalled because I sincerely feel like this was a type of revelation that then reiterated all of the situations in the past where we as Black people are saying you are engaging in cultural gaslighting. This is a confirmation of the 30, 40 plus years of cultural gaslighting that has been going on when you all have been saying we are in a post-racial and post-sexist society. No,
Please.
we are not.
Right. No.
We are not. We now have a sitting commander in chief who is literally behaving in such a extreme way that they are making parallels to him and Hitler,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have a sitting commander in chief who is a convicted felon and a sexual assaulter.
Mm-hmm.
We have a commander in chief who is an individual who has been seen and shown to have a particular perspective about diversity, equity, and inclusion, to and to have commodified it in such a way where you have taken the word woke that was utilized in has etymological roots in the Black community, in civil rights movements, to make it such a ugly turn of phrase. We
Mm-hmm.
know what you are against. We people for the longest period of time, Black folks will say you have to know who your enemy is. We know who the enemy is now. It's very clear. What are you going to do about it? What are you doing?
Yes. So let's think about what are we going to do about it. So you talked about not being immobilized by fear. So I'm wondering with the Black men that you all work with, how has how have they been impacted by the election? What have they been sharing with you? And have you seen instances of kind of being immobilized by fear or frustration or any other things? How have the Black men you work with been impacted by the election results?
I think the most immediate response I can give is this feeling of being blamed, right? It is somehow your fault that Donald Trump became president. And when we look at the statistics, when we look at the numbers, that's not necessarily true, right? That's not true at
Right,
all, actually.
right.
But it's specifically within my generation where it's the conversation of political affiliation by way of acknowledgement. So there are a number of Black men, because I run groups in expression, so Black men as well, and I ask them, I'm like, yo, how do you all feel about this conversation that's being perpetuated about the specifically the group of Black men in my age range between the ages of I think like 21 and 45? They were split down the middle as it related to the Democratic and the Republican Party, right? So when we look at what is this data saying, like what are we examining here? And a number of Black men that I was talking to, their response was, we feel more validated here than we do here. We feel more seen here than we do here. And I recognize that a number of Black men, in my own observation, politics is where Black men feel acutely powerless and invisible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a ploy for power. Who is going to give me what it is that I'm actually asking for, instead of coming to me at the last minute saying, "Hey, we need you to do this," which for a number of Black men is a reperpetuation of performative masculinity archetypes.
Wow. You said performative masculinity archetypes?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
I don't need you as your being. I only need you when I need you to do something.
Mm,
I
okay.
only need you when I need you to perform these stereotypical things that a man should do. But if we are asking you about what it is that you truly need, we have nothing for you.
Because it feels disingenuous.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. What about for you, John Christopher? What have the Black men that you work with or you've been in association with, how have they been impacted by the election?
So for me, a lot of the Black men I work with, I mean, there's this overarching kind of sense of dread, but it's also like, hey, I can't even deal with this right now. I have so much on my plate. Like, if we consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the Black men that I'm working with, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are drowning. Right? A
Mm,
lot of them are struggling with issues. A lot of them have challenges in their personal lives, with their partners or relationships, trying to form stronger relationships and connections with their children,
mm,
ranging from child to adult, are having issues of kind of discrimination and overwork at their jobs, their
mhm,
places of employment.
mhm,
Like they're dealing with some real everyday challenges. And it's like, yeah, like this thing is huge. This thing, it sucks, but I don't even have the time to process this right now. Like
mm.
I'm just trying to make it through the day because I don't really have anyone to support me.
Oh, wow. So very much on survival issues, like the here and now, and not feeling supported.
Oh, absolutely. And we talk about, but I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but
Mhm.
I think a large percentage of Black men feel unsupported in general. Right,
Mm,
and we're talking, in the relationships, they can have relationships that have lasted a period of time. Like, we're not just talking about people kind of hopping in and out relationships. People have been married for decades, not feeling supported, feeling as if they can't cry, in front of their partner, feeling as if, if they don't, if they're not performing, right, if they're not engaging in stereotypical acts of masculinity, that they are worthless to their families, to the people that love them. So yeah, Black men are hurting. There is a lot of Black men who are hurting and in pain, and it's
mm,
like I can't even deal with this new pain right now. I still got this current pain I'm working
mm,
through. I'm still trying to figure out how to get a closer relationship, with my children. I'm still trying to heal this, incident that occurred in my childhood. I'm still trying to work through, this trauma that happened, with my peers when I was a
mhm,
teenager. I'm still trying to deal with all these issues that I never got help with and support with my entire life.
mm. So
And
unresolved
just weight,
trauma. Mhm.
unresolved trauma, and just weight, like in our visible suitcases. I mean, I really, I mean, and I'm putting this out there rhetorically, but for Black men, how often do we get to unpack our suitcases? Right? When we unpack our suitcases, we end up dead. Right? We end
Yeah.
up arrested. Right? We end up in situations that you often don't make it out of.
Mm.
So I mean, the Black men I'm working with, they're carrying burdens with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's very profound. You said, how do we unpack or how do we help support them unpacking their suitcases? Okay, I want us to go back to that. So, John, what would you say with the men that you work with or you're associated with? How have they been impacted by the election?
But I'm right there with Chris. I think people are dealing with so much being thrown at them that, in a sense, I think we might not recognize how privileged we are in our ability to be clear enough to be having this conversation. When
Mm,
people are trying to deal with what are the right roles, when again, I've been raised with the 1950s mentality But with this new 2000s mentality of you can't find a job that's going to allow you to take care of your family just by yourself, right? It's
Mhm.
set to where two people have to go out and work, but yet live in a 1950s mentality of where she's supposed to do this and he's supposed to do that. And
Mhm.
so, with that breaking apart, you have families that don't even know how to stay together or how to make it about the bigger picture. And
Mhm.
I think going through all of that muck, then it's just filtering down to, um, am I going to get a stimmy check? Right? Am
Wow.
I going to get this little bit of support to where some of the black men that I know voted for Trump? That actually was like, I had more money in my pocket and so on and so forth under Trump. And that was just how it all broke down. Right?
Mm.
Most of us are playing checkers to the game of chess. So
Mhm.
it's not to where I think a lot of the brothers that I know have the ability to even consciously fathom the depths of what's going on. They're
Mhm.
just trying to make it into this day by day thing. And
Mhm.
this high level presidential election, and as we get into Congress and things like that, they're not even on that plane to be dealing with it in
Mhm.
that way as they're just trying to survive the matrix.
Okay. So with many people, many black men on the survival level, right? We talked about unpacking the suitcase. We talked about um, really looking at they're looking at economic things. They're looking at survival. So how do we support as healers? How do we support black men in unpacking these suitcases? How do we support black men as healers?
I let the professors take it.
um, Honestly, truthfully, we have to be prepared to hear things that we don't necessarily like. We have to be
Mhm.
prepared to hear. We have to be prepared to see Superman wounded. And I don't think a lot of people in the Black community are prepared for that type of picture, right?
Mhm.
Because even in, throughout civil rights movement, throughout civil rights movement imagery, throughout, you know, uh, Black idealistic imagery, Black men are very rarely wounded. They're very rarely tired. They're very rarely seen as somebody who needs to sit and breathe. The imagery that we usually have of Black men is of Black men doing Black male things. Once again, engaging in this performance of masculinity archetype. But healing is inherently necessary of rest, right? And the vision of a resting Black man for a number of people creates insecurity because that resting Black man usually and historically has meant that a ravaging white man is going to come and burn or blow something up or down,
Mhm.
right? We
So mhm.
go ahead.
No, go no,
I'll,
so you talked about that we might have to see things that we don't wanna see, that we're not comfortable seeing
mhm.
as a community?
Yes, as a community, right? Because even within ourselves as Black men, it is difficult for us to face the reality that we have been wounded to a point where we need that recovery time. I think that a number of us as Black men are fighting with this idea that we have to survive and then turn around and give ourselves the permission to rest or the permission to take up emotional space. Because in my work with Black men, I ask a lot of Black men, why is it that you will fight to take up physical space but not emotional space? Why do you believe that taking up emotional space is somehow detrimental to your overall well being when the reality of the situation is, brother, warriors don't fight wars all the time. They don't. They can't. You would become exhausted. The point of your exhaustion is not the point of your freedom. And I feel like a number of Black men. I was at the Black Manosphere Conclave, and I said that a number of Black men have conflated masculinity with abuse. You've conflated this idea of masculinity with how much you can be beaten, downtrodden, stepped on, invalidated without being able to say anything. That's on one side. But on the other side, it's I feel like just like Christopher said, um, in our invisible suitcases, we hold pictures of traumas that a number of Black people want to forget. And in
Mm,
reviewing those photographs, we are at times revisiting those traumas, and we have to create capacities. We have to create emotionally intelligent capacities for not only just the trauma of Black women and children, but the trauma of Black men. And a lot of times when we think about trauma, we tend to exclude how it is that men receive trauma instead of how it is that they perpetuate it.
okay, so let's talk about how do we create spaces where Black men feel comfortable to emotionally take up space? How
We
do we
have to
do
allow them to. We got to allow them space to just talk for real, like honestly, and being able to. The fact that we're even asking this question of what a safe space for Black men looks like constitutes to the reality that we don't have very many of them.
Mm,
But I
mhm.
think a great starting point is just allowing us to talk.
Okay, okay, okay. We're gonna say, John?
I'm gonna say, it's allowing us to just be men. I think sometimes we don't recognize the box that we get placed in by even saying like Black man. And that kind of context now makes us like, oh, Black man. So now we get this image of what a Black man should look like. And I was having this discussion, a spiritual discussion with a Jehovah Witness. And I was like, well, as a Black man, this, and as a Black man, that. And, we would get into these arguments. And then later I had to recognize this brother was raised in Panama. He wasn't a brother who had been raised in the US. So the label of Black man had a kind of different connotation to him. And I
Mhm,
had to now sit back and shut my mouth and go, men, and now
mm,
just have a dialogue as human beings and sort of kind of even recognize that the whole Black man is a box to trap us, to see us as these kind of separate entities and not really be doing, I think, what Professor Odie was saying, which is listen to a wounded individual,
mm,
listen to someone who actually has a story to say, and recognize that their pain, that their trauma has place, right? It has reason behind it. And so it's not to be like, oh, how dare you be upset? Why are you talking in that way? But can we be a human being enough to be listening to one another and not judging the fact that we have trauma responses?
mhm. Okay, and so the responses may look like what for Black men? How might it look? So it might look like because typically when I train on trauma, I talk about ways that we might misinterpret some behaviors in terms of they might be trauma responses. What are some of the ways that maybe for Black men that either you have experienced personally that you do these and or Black men you work with that you've seen these are trauma responses, but people are misinterpreting the trauma response?
The anger, the frustration, in the sense that there's that sense to be holding back your sensitivity. And now that you've been challenged, it's an eruption to get out what you're not used to allowing to flow. And so we see eruption as danger and not like, can we allow him to kind of get it up and out? And I
Mm,
see this as where I think I had a gentleman in a training and whatever, and he was being confronted in a way to where it was just expected for him to take it because he was a man and
mhm,
not really respect that. Whoa. He's still a human being that needs to be listened to, that needs to be cared for, that needs to be honored, and not
mhm,
should just be shut down because he might be a man and she might be a woman, right?
mhm,
That could they both be human beings going through something. And so like
mhm.
really recognizing that we too need to be honored.
Okay, okay. Now, Christopher, you mentioned also about many Black men have reported feeling unsupported, even unsupported in their relationships. So, what does that look like in terms of not being supported? And when we think about, because I'm thinking about steps forward, right? So, how do we heal moving forward? So, what are some of the ways that Black men feel unsupported? And what are some of the ways that people can convey the support besides letting a Black man talk and express himself? What are some other ways?
Yeah, and unsupported was my word, but the the Black men that I've been working with, you know, that wasn't necessarily in the vocabulary, right? It was a whole bunch of descriptions of situations, and
Mhm,
that was the theme. It's like not
mhm,
being supported, not being able to express yourself emotionally, not being able to have your voice heard. Like, Professor O said it the best, where, we, uh, Black men are often fighting for space physically, but not emotionally.
mm,
And building off Ja's point, I mean, just that, just the term black man, right? Like there's so much, there's pressure, there's stereotypes, there's expectations that come with both positive and negative, right?
mhm,
But there's a lot that just kind of comes with just being a black man, right?
mhm,
So dealing with that pressure and that expectations. I mean, radical rest, right? There's a quote. I'm blanking on who it's from. If you know it, please point it out. But radical rest is the what is it? It's like the ultimate form of standing against depression.
Oh, Audre Lorde.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, being able to rest. The black men that they don't rest. They
Mm,
don't rest. They can't even rest in their own homes. You know,
mm,
and a lot of that is due to pressures, expectations, conflicts, with their partner. But they're not allowed to rest. They can't rest at work. They can't rest at home. If they try to go out with their boys and get some peace, they're static on that.
mhm,
Like there's drama when they try to get peace, so they can't even get peace when they leave the house, because it's norm that presents an issue. And then when they come home, they're walking into a worse situation because of
mm,
it. So there's a lot of expectations and pressure, but being able to have radical rest, and there's healing in relationships. Right now, a lot of the men that I work with, they're not in the healthiest relationships, but there are. I mean, I spoke about it, the panel that you and I were last at, Dr. Kamani, where I
mhm,
wouldn't be here professionally, emotionally. I may not even be here, period, if it wasn't for black women. Like black women saved my life literally. You know, um, full being services wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for a black woman. You know, and so there are black women out there that that are supportive, that are loving, that are nurturing, that are caretakers, that they want to pour into us.
mhm,
Um, and and from our brothers, we don't always get connected to those women. Like they're
mhm,
out there, but we don't always get connected to them. And
mm,
you know, I think there's a lot of healing in relationships, because a lot
mhm,
of harm, a lot of trauma, a lot of damage is done in relationships. That could be paternal or parental relationships. That could be work relationships. That could be whoever you're with, in your block, in your neighborhood growing up. But there's also a lot of healing and growth that can be done in relationships. And
mhm,
too many of our black men are not in relationships that foster their growth, that nourish them, that give
mhm,
them emotional sustenance. Like they're not allowed to be emotional, right? Because just being that's the stereotype of being a man. There's a lot of talk about toxic masculinity, but there's not. I haven't heard much talk about how women perpetuate some of those stereotypes of toxic masculinity in those relationships, right? Like I have men crying in sessions with me because they can't cry with their partners, you know? So healthier relationships, right? I mean, emotional intelligence, it cuts both ways. Like men need it, women need it too. And a lot of times women are great at supporting each other, but and they can support other men, but are they supporting their man? Like I don't think that gets talked about enough. So we're talking about healing in relationships. We're talking about radical rest. Um, I mean, we're talking about spaces where we can come together and also non-judgmental spaces, because there's one thing, if there's one thing that we know Black people are good for, we can make a joke out of anything, right? We can make a joke out of any single, you name something, we can have you cracking up,
Yeah.
right? But with that, right, you're not allowed to show your insecurities with that. Some of those jokes hurt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we
We don't
laugh
talk
all
about
the
that,
time. Yeah.
right? We don't talk about that. So when we get together in these spaces, can we be in spaces where they're non-judgmental, right?
Mm.
Can we be in spaces where we have certain boundaries, where we don't take low blows sometimes, just because the fruit is hanging doesn't mean we got to grab it, you know?
True. True.
So
True. Well,
yeah,
you know what, Christopher? You opened the door, and now I'm gonna kick it open because you opened the door. Okay. So I want us to talk about something that you made reference to. But first, I want to say hello, Reverend Charles. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good evening, everybody.
Hello. Can you just briefly introduce yourself?
I'm Reverend Calvin Sauls, faith rooted community organizer, uh, former senior pastor, Homer United Methodist Church, and I live and work at the intersection of South Los Angeles and South Africa. And so it's good to be here. And to I've been driving actually, so I have just been listening, and I'm like, oh my gosh! So I want to just commend you, Dr. Kamani, and my brothers. Y'all have been deep. Y'all have gone deep and wide. My
Well,
goodness.
we're about to go
So,
even deeper. We're about to go even
oh, even
deeper.
deeper.
You came in just at the right time. We're about to go really deep now, okay? So so this is what I love about live conversations is that I'm thinking we're going to talk about one thing, but then more stuff comes up and it just unravels into bigger issues that I think we need to talk about as a community.
Mhm.
So, Professor Odie, you talked about the Black Manosphere conclave, and I wanted to talk about the Black Manosphere. And then, Christopher, you talked about women perpetuating these toxic masculinity stereotypes. Can you please? We got to talk about this, okay? So, I would love to hear from all of you about ways that this might look and ways that we can address this issue, right? Because I'm looking at like the gender wars that unfortunately we're seeing between Black men and Black women. It drives me crazy. So how do we kind of put these things on the table and identify these are the things that are contributing to us being divided, and how do we really come together so that we don't continue this way of being, because it doesn't benefit either one of us. It doesn't benefit Black
Mhm.
men and women for us to be divided. So I would love to hear that the door's been kicked wide open. Okay. So let's talk about either one of those.
I gotta give
Yeah.
it
You
to
want to go
Professor
first?
Odie. I gotta give it to Professor.
Listen,
Yeah, you
listen.
got it, bro.
It's funny. It's
Who
funny.
kicked that door open? Who kicked that door open?
It was Dr.
Christopher kicked it open. I was like, let's
Christopher, you got to go first, brother.
I feel like I turned the knob. But Odie about to kick the door down. Go ahead, bro.
Listen, listen. So I literally just did an episode on Express Yourself, the Express Yourself Black Man podcast, and I was at the Black Manosphere Conclave. And one of my biggest things is when we are talking about perpetuating toxic masculinity through women, Bell Hooks said that patriarchy does not have a gender, right? So when we begin identifying this reality, that there are a number of women, like literally, he just posted the Express Yourself Black Man just posted the clip on Instagram, literally. What I said was, if a woman places your gender before your humanity, you might need to leave that person. Sincerely.
Right.
If that woman places your gender before your humanity, you might need to leave that person. And the reason why I say that is because, once again, when we are talking about traditional masculine ideology in the Western perspective, whenever we have the word traditional, it means white, right? Traditional masculine ideology makes you a martyr for the cult of masculinity instead of allowing you to feel yourself in your fullness, right? And this dichotomy of femininity being related to emotions is what a number of men struggle with, but it's also what a number of women perpetuate. Like I've heard women say he can be emotional, but not as emotional as me. What do you mean? What does that mean? Can you elaborate on that? Oh, well, he X, Y, Z. So what you're telling me is that you do not, you are emotionally policing, you are tone policing this individual based upon what it is that you believe that masculinity looks like. You have internalized this conceptualization of patriarchal masculinity, yet you do not believe that that same construction should be adhered to when it comes to how it is that you navigate through the world. That's wildly hypocritical. And it, once again, for me, it represents a very narrow and a very uh, myopic construction of emotional intelligence. You cannot call yourself emotional intelligent. You would not insult my emotional intelligence by trying to pass yourself off that way. It creates a hostile environment where in which men have a very keen difficulty with engaging in that feeling of support. Not only that, when we talk about this idea of bringing it back to the whole idea of the hostile political environment, there are a number of men who have extreme difficulty engaging in the empathy of women having their rights removed because a number of men feel like a number of men, especially a number of black men, felt like they did not have the right to begin with. How can I empathize with you when you have not empathized with me about me feeling as if though I cannot navigate through this political landscape? So when you say to me, I did it, why can't you do it? And then I give you a list of the political and socio-cultural reasons why these things exist, and then you turn around and you say to me, it's an excuse, you're literally minimizing and invalidating my emotional reality. A number of men do not have that same emotional vocabulary that I have to express it that way, but it does not remove the emotion that they have. It does not.
Mm.
So when we are talking about perpetuating gender stereotypes to the point where it removes or it minimizes or invalidates somebody's humanistic reality, I had a homegirl that said, when I started empathizing with men the same way that I empathize with my own girls, my entire perspective in relationship with men changed.
Hmm. So empathizing in the sense of really understanding their life experiences and allowing them to express whatever and not, like you said, emotional tone policing in some ways. So
Yes,
if they
Mhm.
express emotion, then they're criticized for that.
yes.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if I can come in, just pick it up from there. I mean, I think in so many ways, you know, we're living in gender wars grounded in uh, um, projection and perception, right? Rather than, as you said, humanity and dignity. And we should not be surprised about that because of the how we've arrived here. And I say we, even though I've been born and raised in South Africa, I have chosen to intentionally and deliberately identify, with the African American experience in this country. In terms of that. So that's why I say we, right? And part of that has been, we are finding ourselves right now in Trumpocracy 201. That is a direct correlation of the Lost Cause 201. The Lost Cause 201 is perpetuated and built, on institutionalizing deception, right, by a colonizer based on the destruction that has taken place, right? Denial about that, and how that deception and denial is institutionalized, institutionalized and kept in place by way of division and discrimination that then creates a sense of a deprivation, and that is the recipe for destruction. And
Mm.
so sometimes what happens within, our relationships is we begin to project that, right? And it is a projection that is convenient for us in so many ways because we've internalized, right? We've read the script and we go according to the script. And that's
Mhm.
why, in South Africa, we define humanity as Ubuntu, right? And Ubuntu means I am because you are, and because you are, therefore I am. So the point of departure is humanity and dignity,
Mhm.
right? And if any relationship, if that's not the point of departure, before we know it, given this construct and context that we in, right? In a country that is built on settler colonization and genocide, right? And the exploitation and dehumanization of our ancestors. We're gonna internalize that, right? And project it, on one another if we do not, right? If we are not careful around that. As brothers, we're certainly not perfect, right? All
Mhm.
right. But in our imperfection, we are not, we ought not to be dehumanized because of that. And so this whole piece about gender wars, right? I always caution folk against that, because if I look at my significant other based on his or her humanity and dignity, that then facilitates what I believe, proximation as well as, compassion, with empathy as that point of departure, so that we can understand that we are not, the issue with one another and to fight one another. This might be a battle, but there's a war out there, and that war has just intensified by way of what happened on November the 5th. And
Mhm.
and I think that's the big picture that we ought not to forget. And so we ought not to succumb, right, to this blame thing now. Because of what happened, let's blame, black men. Because of what happened, let's blame so and so. Okay, I mean, let's come to terms with the fact that we have been pushed into, a binary, right, a political binary situation where we've been forced to choose between the lesser evil. Where evil is evil, right? And we need to let the Democratic Party check itself, right? And I love what was said earlier on. You come to us when you need us to perform, right? And then after that performance doesn't work out, and then you blame us. That is the script for any colonizer, and blame the victim kind of stuff. You see,
Mhm.
and so we got a lot of work to do, and part of that work is to see how we, engage in a disposition of affirmation and celebration of our humanity and dignity. And then let's work from there around restoration of it towards liberation.
Wow. So you kind of really laid out like a social historical background about why we have come to view each other in that way. So
Yes.
my question is moving forward, and I know we're going to come to a close. So moving forward, how do we then acknowledge the internalization and then counter the internalization so it doesn't impact our relationships in a negative way in terms of steps
Mhm,
forward? I
mhm,
think that's the question I'm asking. Like, how do we move forward?
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Jai, you going to say something?
I think the reverend is right there in the sense of just recognizing the importance of this spiritual rebirth, that we need to die to this old identity or these old identities, because
Mm,
all it does is we say, from the male side, from the female side, we're all in assumptionships and not relationships, right?
mm,
We instead of how we relate to one another, we are just assuming how we should be, and now in this punishment and pleasure, right? Love means that I accept you for who you are, not who I think you should be. And if we could begin to start recognizing that we need this death to kind of take place so that we can have this spiritual rebirth, that's, I think, where we all have to start from.
mm. You said assumption ship.
Assumptionships, yes.
Assumptionship. I love that.
Ooh,
Assumptionships instead of relationship.
wow.
I'm not
That
gonna
was
lie,
good.
that was a bar. That was a bar. That was a bar.
Look, look, y'all was saying some stuff. I was driving. I couldn't take notes, y'all. So I'm gonna have to go check out this recording because if I try to take notes, sure enough, the CHP would have gotten to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, yes. So I think that we've established that we have some work to do, particularly in terms of male female relationships. But I want to end on this because I'm not sure which one of you said this. I think it was you, Jai. You talked about for the young men, really helping young Black men have a true understanding of who they really are. Because and I'm a mother of two young men, and when I look at what they're exposed to and what like society is trying to force feed them about who they are to be, it's 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 heartbreaking. And we're trying to counter that, but there's so many messages around them that are so destructive. So can we
Mhm.
talk as a community? How do we, and this of course relates to young Black girls as well, but particularly for
Mhm.
Black boys, Black men, young Black men, I feel like there's this really like determination to really support like seeds of destruction. So can we talk about how do we support young Black men?
Yeah, I'll start quickly because right now I'm at Sanctuary of Hope in South LA, one of my community partners, and tomorrow we are hosting what we call here Mansuary, Mansuary, because it's called Sanctuary of Hope. You know, and we've heard from the guys saying, the place is being too feminized for us. So
Hmm.
we said, okay, we hear you. Let's co-create, right, a space that affirm who you are, right, as a human being, that can exude, positive masculinity. And
Mhm.
so they came up with the name Mensuri, right? And so we meet monthly, and this is a multi-generational group. They come from all over the county, as far as the Antelope Valley, to several spots here in LA. And really, I think what we seek to do is an invitation to proximation, and that approximation starts with both our pain, but also our purpose and our possibilities, and how we can, be, engaged in that in courageous and compassionate, conversations, and in doing that, to say that in the space, we will invite you, to see how you can engage first in authentic, right, conversation, brave, right, conversation, and compassionate conversation that will enable you to see how you can, deliberately, right, come to terms with who you are, where you are, but also get to understand who you are called to be and how we can walk and work with you towards that. And I think that's one way of doing that. And as a Black immigrant, and early on, what are you talked about? The fact that there is diversity, in Blackness right now in the United States, because we're talking about African American men and we're talking about Black immigrant men that come
Mhm.
from all over the world, not just the continent, right? They come from Central and South America, from Europe, in terms of that. And that means there are different points of departure, but we've all experienced the same devastation of colonization. So
Mhm.
proximation it has to be real in terms of how I, as a Black immigrant, has to come to terms with the experience, right, of an African American man, and to see, how, we can, in some way approximate around that. And I'll close with this. Baldwin helps me a lot, you know, with all this, stuff, as a Black immigrant, and he writes, he says, please try to remember that what they believe, as well as what they do and cause you to endure, does not testify to your inferiority, but to their inhumanity. So how
Oh.
do I counter that inferiority? by embracing and by my humanity and extending that humanity, to brothers by creating, that safe, and authentic and brave space, for the brothers to arrive in that space and to see, how we, move, beyond brokenness to wholeness.
Okay, so honoring humanity and providing a space where humanity is valued and that young men and I guess men across ages are able to really talk and connect to who they really are as opposed to what society thinks that they are. Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you. What about the rest of you? What are we going to do about our young men? How do we support them and knowing who they really are, the truth of who they really are?
So I love the Baldwin quote. I'll follow up with another one is, to be a black man and to be relatively conscious is to be in a constant state of rage, right?
Mm,
So where can we let our rage out in a way that will not cause harm to ourselves or each other?
mm, mm,
Where are we safe? Where are our safe places to let our rage out?
mm,
Mhm.
Rage is a
Mhm.
valid
Mhm.
emotion. We have a lot of reasons to
mhm.
be upset. We have a lot of reasons to be hurt. We have a lot of reasons to be angry.
True.
But what safe spaces do we have to let out our rage?
Mm,
Now, consequences and repercussions where we're not going to bring harm to ourselves or harm to other people who look like us.
yes.
And
Yes.
that's what we need. We need our own outlets, right? And additionally, it's not an individual thing. It's a community thing, right?
Mm,
And again, I have to go back to relationship. I mean, again, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Black women, right? So
Mhm.
how are we, fostering environments where, you know, nurturing healthy Black women can get together and help nurture and provide space for Black men and plant seeds for growth, right? And then as Black men, right, are we pouring back into them, right? Are we protecting them, right? So it's not just one sided, right? It goes, but we all have a part to play in
mhm,
this. But
mhm,
we need our spaces, but we also need community, right? So um that connection with each other and also within ourselves. I mean, Professor Odie said it earlier, when we say traditional, we're talking about white, right? What are our traditions though? When are
mm,
we going to reconnect with our past and our history and our way of doing things, our
mhm,
ways
Mhm.
of being in communion with each
mhm,
other?
mhm,
Because we experience, it's in our bones, the destruction that you know this society causes. Like we live it. It's shortened our lifespans, right? So we
mm,
need to connect back to the way our ancestors did things. How did they treat each other? And,
mm,
and in these times, I mean, you're right, social media, music, like we are bombarded by messages on who we are supposed to be to fit, some image and fulfill some stereotype and become some number and be added to some system. But we have to protect our spaces, mentally,
mhm,
emotionally. We have to be more mindful about what we're watching, what we're listening to, but we also need our own institutions, right?
mhm,
Like if they don't play music that's uplifting to us, right, where's our apps, where's our stations that plays, because it is out there. People are making artwork, movies, music that is uplifting, that is
mhm,
resilience bolstering,
mhm,
right? But what's getting all the accolades, what's getting all the marketing, right? Django, 12 Years a Slave, right? Like things that show us, in our most, kind of beat down, most vulnerable, um being traumatized over
mhm,
and over and over again, right? So
mhm.
we need to, invest in ourselves, in our community, and have our own.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
just
I'll see
I
right
keep
there.
going back to that.
Yeah, it goes back to what you said before, Christopher, about healing and community and the importance of rechanneling our rage in ways that are safe for ourselves and other people, but having that outlet to get that out of our bodies. So that actually leads me to job in terms of like, like metabolizing trauma and getting that out of our bodies and movement. What would you say for young Black men that might be helpful for them, particularly like movement?
Well, well, first, I think in the sense of what we talked about, emotional intelligence, that
Mhm,
if teaching emotional intelligence is teaching emotional ownership, that I am the owner of my emotions, right? If
Mhm.
I'm surprised, right, then I'm surprised. It's not the fault of the election about my surprise. And so that's the same thing, even in my rage. In order for it to be safe, I have to understand that it is mine, that
mm,
it is, in a sense, from my belief system, that I have this rage of what should not be. And when I can have that, now I know that I can go out and do something to let this rage out, as
mm,
opposed to rage against something,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
When we start talking about punching pillows or doing yoga exercises or running or anything in a sense to let us kind of move this through our system, I think
mhm,
that's some of the most important things of what we can do as yogis. This is what we know and say that exactly I think what Christopher said is that our rage has a point to it. It's valid. It is not
mhm,
an invalid emotion. Same thing with our anger, right? It
mhm,
is not that we should not be these things. It's to recognize that we should, to embrace it. And now let me go someplace and yell at the top of my lungs about what is going on with me, but not let me go
mhm,
someplace and do something to someone. I think there's that
mhm,
difference of when we can be decolonized to again own our karma, own our consequences. Now we can understand how to change ourselves, how to make better choices. Right? Again, yeah, I'm angry. Let me let that person know I'm angry and I need to go do something. This is not the time to have said conversation. That's me
mhm,
having my emotional intelligence. But again,
mhm,
if we continue to let people believe that you made me mad or you did X, Y, and Z to me, then we continue to allow our powerlessness, right? If you're
mhm,
the one that's in control of my emotions, then I'm powerless. But if I
mm,
can be taught that there's something I can do about
mm.
my emotions or with my emotions, now I've got all the power in the world.
So no, to remind that they have the power, even though they may feel powerless, even though society tells you don't have the power, you have the ownership of your emotions and how you choose to respond. Very good. Thank you. What about you, Professor Odie? What would you say?
I believe that we have to diversify what masculinity looks like. One of my favorite quotes about masculinity is that I would rather be a warrior in the garden than the gardener in a war. And I think that encapsulates a number of different aspects as it relates to the ability to recognize when and how to utilize what we believe to be masculinity against incorporating other aspects of things that we believe to not be masculine, right? I believe that Black men should have spaces to rest. I believe that Black men should have spaces to be gentle with themselves. I firmly believe that Black men as a whole, we need to learn how to construct the same softness that we ask for from women and allow ourselves to be in that space without believing that somehow it encroaches upon our masculinity. And creating safe spaces for Black men, younger Black men especially, to show them that masculinity covers a wide array of intellectual, emotional, physical, different types of pillars, different types of spaces, different types of realities, and allowing them to see the multiplicities of what it is that that can look like. I feel like it would do an amazing job of how it is that we can continue to move forward as Black men.
Okay, awesome. So, as we are winding down, can you each share about services that you offer and how you can be contacted? So, we'll start with you, Jeff.
Ugh, services. Uh, the services I offer yoga teacher trainings, which people usually think this is about learning how to be a yoga teacher, when it's truly learning about all of these things that we've talked about. of re-identifying, if you will, and tapping into that power that we have inside of us. So I run these trainings that people can find on my website. I also do yamas and yamas, which is mental yoga, which gives us an opportunity to kind of go through the ethics of yoga to see how we're being in the world and see if we change that being, can we change our world? And usually people kind of have this great insight after 10 weeks of kind of going through that. And so there's other things that I also offer that are all these kind of journeys to go inside to be doing this spiritual work that I think has been removed through colonization of making it history lessons as opposed to making it now lessons. So you can find all that information at myopwellness.com.
Awesome. And I will vouch for the teacher training program, so I just finished it. So if you're interested in becoming a yoga instructor, check out Tree Yoga Cooperative for Tree Yoga. And Christopher, if you could talk about services that you offer and how you could be contacted.
Absolutely. So, Full Being Services, we do therapy. We're in network with several private insurance companies. Also, we wanted to be able to expand the intersection of people that we could work with. So we have several partnerships around the city for low income or no income people to receive services. Juvenile justice involved youth. We're able to provide free workshops with them through the DA's office, and also free therapy sessions as well. Victims of violent crimes in Philadelphia, through a partnership with Central Division of Victim Services, we're able to provide, free therapy for them as well. We just uh, signed a partnership with Ceasefire, an anti-gun violence program. So, people who have been shot in Philadelphia, we're able to provide free therapy for them as well. So we're always looking for ways that we can continue to expand our outreach. And, Black people, we come in a whole diverse flavor and ranges, right? From everything you could think of, from no income to high income. So we don't want to, we want to seal some of those gaps and not leave people out. So from therapy, community workshops, we also do trainings with organizations. you know, um, I'm an advanced facilitator in the core curriculum of childhood trauma. So we've been working with several organizations around the city. We have several more coming up in 2025 where we'll be training staff at all levels, from the administrative assistants to the psychiatrists, on the core curriculum of childhood trauma, the 12 core concepts of trauma, trauma affirming care, how to be more resiliency minded when dealing with people who and families who have been impacted by trauma, and also consulting as well, working on building healthier organizations. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, how we're going to survive is by building healthier communities together. So
That's yes.
absolutely. And the average person spends a majority of their day at work. So we
Mhm.
need these work environments. Like Dr. Kamani, you've worked in a toxic place. I worked in a toxic place. Odie, I know you have. So we know the toll that has.
Yeah.
Right. So, working on building healthier environments, right? Identifying and creating programs to address secondary traumatic stress, vicarious trauma,
Mhm.
working on supervisor competencies, professional development, etc. So those are things that we do as well. We're on LinkedIn, IG, uh, not kind of on Facebook, but we need to work on that. But yeah, you can find us on a website, Full Being Services. Check us out, put in the contact. We also have a newsletter you can subscribe to, and we also do CEU trainings and for the state of PA as well for licensed, and well, I mean, it could be for anybody, but CEU specifically for psychologists, LPCs, LCSWs, LSWs, LMFTs.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot that you guys offer. That's amazing. I see a comment. Do you practice in New Jersey? I think you all are just in Philadelphia, right?
We are, but so I am licensed in Jersey, so I can see clients who live in Jersey, and but we're doing a workshop at a surgery center in Jersey tomorrow for the
Oh,
nurses. So we do things. We've done national workshops, so we're not limited, in our workshops or our consulting at all. And
okay.
Professor Odie's one of our, superstars. Like, this man does it all as well. So I'll let him kind of take it away.
Okay, so they could check the website to see where you guys might practice outside of Philly, right? And other services that you guys have available that you don't have to be necessarily licensed in the state, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, Professor Odie, you're up.
Yeah, pretty much everything that Christopher said. I also work with Full Being Services in the state of Philadelphia. I'm sorry, in the state of Pennsylvania, the city of Philadelphia. We do a number of trauma-informed trainings. We do offer therapy. We do offer community-based interventions, community-based trainings. Full Being Services does a lot for the community in Philadelphia, and I'm very proud to be a part of that mission, to be a part of that organization. Myself as an individual, I did one-on-one coaching, but I'm no longer offering that for the year of 2025. I have to pull back in order to increase my certifications, do things of that nature. Just beef up my professional presentation, things of that nature. But otherwise, you can still find me through the Full Being Services website. I am one of their practitioners. You can also find me through the Soul Care Collective. The Soul Care Collective so Full Being Services is offline, or mainly offline, then the Soul Care Collective is mainly online. This holistic wellness space as well. And you can find me on multiple platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Professor.Odie or Professor_Odie. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I just want to read a few comments that came in. One was, let's see. I've been married for many years, and my husband and me realized early in our marriage that we needed to be gentle and look out for each other. That's good. As a Black woman married to a Black man, it has felt like it was us against the world. My wish is that Black men and women unite and dismantle the propaganda, love and take care of each other, rest and self-care. Yes, absolutely. Yoga helped me so much. Yes, rest is needed across the community. Yes, and they said thank you. Okay, so I want to say to my panelists, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, even though we started off with the post-election, but it got so much bigger and so much richer, which I really appreciate. And I'm sure that my audience will also appreciate hearing from a man or men's perspectives. Also let you know that Reverend Sauls had to leave. He had another engagement. So I will have everybody's information description section. And as we're watching this video, or as you're watching this video, please give this video a thumbs up. It lets YouTube know to suggest this video to other Black women. Also, please share this video with at least two other people, okay? Don't be women, just two other people. Share this video. And if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, please do so and turn on the notification bell. So everyone, thank you again for watching. Panelists, if you guys can stay on, and I will see you later, everyone. Bye-bye.